basically what you mentioned as well is that all these plans, they require this risk modeling. And you mentioned a couple of these risks, but what I wonder is that in your personal experience, have these risks really increased? Like, is there any reality to this? Because I noticed also that there's like risk for earthquakes, and you're not even on like an earthquake area.
No, there's some small earthquakes that have happened actually near me. I didn't realize at the time when I wrote this, my Substack, but that's a full-on mining area. I don't know if anyone's looked at what other possible, reasons there could have been for some sort of earthquake in that area. Um, in my area, we're having a lot of rain. Anything can be anything. They've even last year, I think it was, I started to notice, on your mobile phone, you get your weather, you look at the weather. They were starting to say like intense heat and using really alarmist wording and it was like 28 degrees or 30 degrees. And in Australia, that's not hot. Like Australia is a very hot country. I mean, from a child, it's been seriously hot summers. So anything they ramping up the fear. There's a lot more focus on natural disasters. I think we're in a very rainy period, and I do think we're going to have issues, actual genuine issues with people that have built, the building on flood zones. And I think there is a genuine issue there. But whether or not that's climate change or a cyclical thing, that's up for debate.
Yes, because in the Netherlands, I noticed that there has been a major overhaul in the policies regarding water management. But now, based on climate panic, they are modeling, they are warning for all these water-related disasters. But I really, really wonder if it isn't more a management issue than that. Like, if something goes wrong, they will of course say like, we modeled this and our model was right.
Yeah.
But it's not really the model; it's the management. And you write also that they use like the most worst IPCC
Yeah.
outcomes, and even if the IPCC is against, then they find some other model for.
The 8.5 IPCC pathway, which is, if that's the worst case scenario, according to the IPCC, of what will happen by 2100.
Mhm,
And that's basically that global average temperature rises to around 4.4 degrees
mhm.
and sea ocean rises 0.61 to 1.1 meter. So that's the worst case scenario. And Carbon Brief talks about the creators of the RCP 8.5 had not intended it to represent the most likely business as usual outcome. But it's been used everywhere as this, and it's seen as a breakdown of communication. So if you look at any of our government documents, this happening in New Zealand as well, and also the private contractors who do the data modelling, they use the 8.5. It's always used. And so that's a real concern that they're using the most extreme thing. And in I think it was the National Climate Risk Assessment by the Australian government, they say climate risk is determined by the interaction of a combination of hazard, exposure, vulnerability, and response as defined by the IPCC. The very nature of risks means their impacts are uncertain, but decision makers need to consider the most severe possible outcomes. And this is integral for policy planning and decision making. So they always have this disclaimer: this may not work, this may not be the case. It's not, we
Mhm.
cannot say with any certainty this is going to happen, but they're acting as though it's going to happen. With that New South Wales Reconstruction Authority, it comes under a New South Wales Reconstruction Act that was passed in 2022 that allows this authority, under direction of two ministers, to be able to take people's houses based on preemptively, thinking if there's too much risk for these houses, it's going to be too problematic. We're going to take the land, and they can take your land. So it's already legislated that they can take our land, regardless of whether or not we want them to, and then they can do what they want with the land, and they can on-sell the land.